I did this video because my brother was asked me a question. He said, how do I get rid of the dry spots in my grass? And assuming you're already fertilizing, which is important to do to help keep your grass green and healthy, is you also need to make sure your sprinklers are fine-tuned to make sure they get all the dry spots. And there's a dry spot here that we took care of by adjusting that middle sprayer. The first thing to do is just go through and make sure that your sprinklers are all adjusted and fine-tuned to the best way possible to hit the dry spots. Sometimes that's the easiest way. You can take a screwdriver, usually a very small flathead screwdriver, to adjust those sprayers and tone them down or turn them up. And also these rotating sprinklers can be adjusted by same thing, usually a small flathead screwdriver depending on the type and brand of sprinkler. This one is a Rainbird that just requires a small flathead screwdriver for adjustments. And you can just fine tune those adjustments. Sometimes after the long winter of not having the sprinklers on, or kids playing with it, the sprinklers can get turned around and going the wrong direction and not spray where they need to spray. So that's one way the first thing you should do is just fine tune and adjust the sprinklers that you already have. And then the second thing you can do after doing adjustments is you can install different heads. This one right here was just a plain sprayer type sprinkler, which now we changed it to a rotating head to get the dry spot that's right out there. So it would double cover that dry spot and help take care of that. So you can, after you've made fine-tune adjustments to your sprinklers, you can change heads to different type of heads, like this one that can rotate. We switched out the sprinkler on this one. It's pretty simple to do that. You just dig it out a little bit, then unscrew it and screw in a different one. And then you can also move sprinkler heads around like we did in the backyard. We moved one of those sprinkler heads around to get the right spot. So you walk around your yard, you turn on your sprinklers, and you look and see where the water's hitting. And if it's not, you can look at the dry spot specifically and see if the water's not really hitting them very well. You fine tune those sprinklers. You can also adjust your timer. That's another thing we can talk about. Another thing you can do is adjust the timer. And you can see right now I have 3 days per week watering, so it skips every other day. It's usually not necessary to water your grass every single day. You can do that so it waters every day, but in most cases I think watering every other day is adequate. And you can see what I do watering times per day. I do 3 times per day on every zone. You can even increase it to 4 times. What this does is it deep waters every other day. So what will happen is this zone will water Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday 3 times each day that it's watering. So on Sunday it waters 3 times during the middle of the night, starting at midnight. So the reason I do it 3 times is because my property has a little bit of a slope to it. It has kind of a hill. And so if you only water 1 time for a long period of time, like if I just water the zone 1 time instead of 3 times, what happens is the water just runs off. So even if you have it watering for 20 minutes 1 time, is not as good as watering 5 minutes 3 times. If that makes sense, because that way the water has time to soak in, or 5 minutes for 4 times per night. Because if you just water, so it's difference between watering 1 time at 20 minutes versus 3 times at 7 minutes or something like that. So they're both equal to 20 minutes, but if you divide it up into different times, so it goes through all the different cycles once, then all the different cycles twice, then all the different cycles 3 times, so that the water has time to soak in without running off. Because if you just water each station 1 time for 20 minutes, what happens is the water starts to run off and create like a stream that runs off the top of the grass and runs onto the concrete or off the property. So the best thing to do, especially if you have a slope to your property, or even if you don't have a slope, I think this is a good principle, is to water 3 times for shorter increments. So maybe 5 minutes 3 times or 10 minutes 3 times, and you do it every other day during the week. If you really have a really hot and dry climate, you can water more than that. You can maybe water 4 times per week, maybe add the Saturday, so it's every other time, so Saturday and Sunday are doubled up. In my case, I've just been watering 3 nights per week, 3 times. In some cases, you can increase that 4 times. The other thing I do is I have a seasonal adjustment. So I have a season adjustment. Right here it says it's at 40%, plus 40%, because right now is the hottest time of the year, and it's also the longest days of the year. It's like the beginning of July right now. It's July 4th, 2017. So right now I have it at plus 40%. So that means if, for example, I was watering, 10 minutes on each station for 3 times, it's going to water now 14 minutes each time for 3 times. And the reason I do that is because that way I don't have to readjust the timing every time when the season changes. So earlier in the spring, I actually had it down to -20. So I had it down to when I first turned on my sprinklers in April or late April and beginning of May, I had it down to like negative 40% because I only need to water a little bit to keep the grass green and the garden growing. And then as the days got longer and the days got hotter, nowadays it's like 100 degrees during the day, and the days are really long. You know, it's light until 9 o'clock at night. I've increased it to plus 40%, and that way it's going to get enough water to the grass, and that way it's going to keep things green. You can increase that even a little bit if you notice your grass still isn't getting quite green enough, and you're not having a drought in your area, and you know your water bill isn't too expensive. You can increase that a little bit if you need to even get your grass greener, because that's one thing that's going to help make the grass greener is you get it enough water. That's one main issue that I try to be conservative. I try to save as much water as possible because we live in a dry area of the country where water, you know, it's not too terribly expensive. But this year we fortunately have not had a drought issue at all. We had a lot of snow in the mountains, and so I've increased it a little bit to keep the grass greener, and I'm not worried about our state being in a drought situation right now. But in times of drought, and I'm trying to conserve water, I do tone this down a little bit more to try to save as much water as possible. That's another reason why I only water 3 days per week, because there's no reason to water every single day. You know, most of the time it's better for making the roots grow deeper into the ground for the grass if you water. You still need to water enough, but you can do it every other day and get away with it working just fine. So that's another thing to consider. So like I said, the first thing to do is adjust the sprinklers so they're hitting all the dry spots. The next thing to do is maybe turn up the amount that you're watering when it gets to be hot and dry, and the days get to be really long and hot, so the grass gets enough water at night when they're watering. And the other thing you can do that's the hardest of these three things is to replace sprinkler heads or move sprinkler heads, or do actual changes, or maybe add some sprinkler heads if you need to make the watering work better. So here's the sprinkler head that we moved. You can see where we dug up the grass clear over there, and the lucky part is the flex pipe came out from the main pipe was right here. The flex pipe came out and went that way, and that's where the sprinkler head was. And then the nice thing is we just had to undig that and then move the flex pipe over to here, so we didn't even have to unscrew the sprinkler from the flex pipe. We used the same exact sprinkler head and just moved the flex pipe over to here. So now it's going to spray and get this dry spot right here that we're trying to fix. Because when it was over there, it would spray and then kind of miss the dry spot because we didn't want it to point and hit the shed. So now that the sprinkler is more in the corner, it can spray this dry spot wherever it's spraying and keep that dry spot from dying, so the grass will be nice and green right there. So that's one way that you can fix dry spots, is move sprinkler heads or change sprinkler heads, or even add sprinkler heads where you need to. I have another dry spot right there by the shed that's a trickier spot to fix. I have a little sprinkler you can see spraying behind the fence. And again, this fence in the shed was put in after the sprinkler system was designed. And I used to have a rotating head on that one, but it kept spraying in the wrong direction. So I might either take the grass out right here and just create like a little rock garden, you know, with just some rocks or gravel, or xeriscape this area where it's dry, just kind of curve into where the gate is. So I might either remove the grass or add a sprinkler head over here, or change the sprinkler head there to try to spray that dry area. And I haven't decided what I want to do with that one yet. But that's all you have to do, is go around and look at the dry spots in your grass and figure out which ones need to be fixed and how you can fix them, or even take the grass out if it's a place where you don't really need grass. Sometimes it's better just to take the grass out, or add a flagstone, or add a garden bed, or add a rock garden or gravel area, or just xeriscape that spot so that you don't need to water it as much like you do with the rest of the grass. But right here, I really wanted there to still be grass here because the kids and I walk back and forth here a lot. I wanted there to be nice grass for the kids to play on in this area. So we decided just to move the sprinkler head, which worked out really well, and it's going to water that better and keep that more green. It's already looking better. We only just barely moved it yesterday, and it watered last night, and it's already looking like this dry spot is getting better. So that's another thing you can do. If you've already made adjustments to your sprinklers, check the timer and added time, and then also move some heads around to fix dry spots. You can see on this sprinkler that there was a problem here, and the problem is the sprinkler kind of got buried by the grass. And one way to keep the sprinklers working and the dry spots down is to check and see, turn on the sprinklers and see if the grass or rocks or something is kind of in the way. This one is right behind a little bit of a rock retaining wall area here. And we just undug it a little bit and trimmed the grass around it. And I'm going to turn this on and check and see if it's working better now that we've removed some of the grass there. So that's another simple thing you can do, is just unbury the sprinklers, trim the grass down really short around where the sprinklers are so that they're able to spray and get the grass in other areas where it needs to be watered. Dry spot here in the yard, and one way you can fix dry spots is by substituting the normal sprayers for the types that spray longer distance like this. And so what we've done is right here in this corner we have a sprayer that just a small pop-up sprayer that we're going to replace with this sprayer that can hopefully hit the dry spot over there and kind of overlap water this area of the grass.
Hello, so we can see that this one is just fanning out, and it's not reaching as far as we want it to, so we're going to replace it with a rainbird that will shoot out in different directions the way we want it to.
So we're going to replace this sprayer that you just saw that doesn't cover very far. We want to replace it with one of these type sprayers that will shoot out farther and get the dry spots that we're missing in our yard on the grass here. So since we already dug it out, which is the hard part, we just unscrew this head. Can you see down in the hole?
Yep.
All the way down? I don't think you can. There we go. And you'll make sure when you dig it out all the way around so you don't get dirt and mud and stuff getting down in there. This wasp is wanting to get to that mud, so you just screw it back on. You can use Teflon tape if you're concerned about it leaking, but if it leaks just a teeny bit there, I'm not concerned as long as I screw it on pretty tight. These wasps are really circling now.
Yeah, let's hurry and get this done.
Shooting out way too far, so we need to adjust it down. The nice thing about these rainbirds is it just uses a flathead screwdriver to adjust. That's better.
So now it's fanning out more.
Yeah.
And closer.
But it's also going to come turn around and spray us, so I got to adjust this part of it down too. Watch out the camera. Move the camera, you're going to get it sprayed.
You got it.
So this adjustment just controls how far it rotates.
Should I be done yet?
Sure, you can be done anytime. Okay, looks like we got this pretty well adjusted where we need it to be. I also found a sprinkler wire here I want to push down farther so we don't accidentally cut that in the future digging this out. I'm going to push that down, maybe put a rock on top of it. Get some scrap tire and a rock to kind of bury. There's a wire here that's controlling the sprinkler system, and it's really in a bad place here because anytime we go to dig the sprinkler pipe up, I don't want to cut this wire. So I'm going to kind of wrap it with this rubber to protect it, and then also put a rock here right like pretty much on top of it, so that when we dig down in the future to undig this sprinkler head, we won't be cutting that wire down there. And now we can bury it because it's in a pretty good spot here. I like this spot, it's good. I'm going to fill this in, some mud. Now I think that new sprinkler, because it will spray much farther, will take care of that little brown spot out there that's been a pain to keep watered, and kind of just more generally double cover the grass and even the garden section over here in general. I think that will work nicely. Just need to adjust that a little bit more, that it's working good. Right here we replaced a head with a dual sprayer head. There used to be a sprinkler on a tall riser here, and the problem with that is the sprayer would spray over this dry spot right here. And instead of hitting the dry spot, it would overspray and just hit there. So you can see the area is green out there because the water would spray over and miss the dry spot. So we lowered that down closer with a pop-up, so it's down far closer to the ground, and also used a dual spray head. So it's still a short sprayer, but it has a dual spray head that will hopefully water this dry spot better. It gets baked in the sun all day. So you can see this is the really tall shrub sprayer that we had here that was overspraying and missing this dry spot over here. And so by replacing it with a pop-up, what it's going to accomplish two things. It's going to allow the dual spray pop-up sprayer to spray this dry area over here and hopefully water that better, because that head was way too high off the ground and it didn't have a dual spray, so the spray would just spray one stream of water and miss and just water this green spot over here, but completely miss this dry area over here. And so the dual sprayer will water it, but also having a pop-up will make it so it won't get destroyed and hit by a lawnmower or some kid playing in the yard and breaking off that really tall head. That's what happened over here with this one. This one we replaced. This one used to have a really tall head, but it got broken by a lawnmower, so the pop-ups are nice, even if they're not in the middle of the grass. Like this one's in the gravel next to the house, so it's not really going to get hit by a lawnmower, but since we were mowing the lawn right next to it, it did get hit and broke. And so it's nice to have pop-ups, less likely to get broken. And in this case, we need one that's lower to the ground and has a dual sprayer so we can water this dry area here. So we're trying to accomplish the fix with that. So here's our dual sprayer. And looks like it's working. Gonna make some adjustments. The nice thing is when it's not totally buried, I can kind of push the head around into a good position, so it's going to make sure it waters good this dry spot. It does look like it's hitting and watering it though, so I think it's going to be better. And there's that head over there that we were talking about, and there's the dual spray. I'll film it from another angle so you can see the dual spray here in a second. I'm kind of angling this down so it makes sure it gets that dry spot that's been a problem dry spot for a long time. And while you still have moist ground, and you can kind of tip the sprinkler into the right position so that you make sure it's getting your dry spot covered. I also don't want it to water the shed over there, so I'm kind of tilting it down a little bit more so it doesn't really quite water the shed and it waters our dry spot like we want it to. You can see that dual spray working right there. That's spraying down low and up high, and so it will water that dry spot over there. You can't really see where the water's hitting, but it is hitting that dry spot better than before, so that should hopefully take care of that dry spot with that dual spray pop-up head there to get adjusted to the right spot. Here's the sprinkler head after we got it all buried with the rocks around it and in a good position here, so that will hopefully, with that dual spray head being closer to the ground, take care of this dry spot over here. Here's another dry spot problem we're trying to solve. And the reason why this dry spot exists is because this sprinkler system was installed in our yard years ago before we built this big shed here. And what we did is we can't make this Rainbird sprinkler turn, and if it waters that spot, it's going to hit the shed. And it kind of sprays over it as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to dig out this sprinkler, bring it over to here more in the corner of the yard to where it can water where it's been watering already and water the dry spot there toward where the dog is sitting. So we're digging this out. Sometimes you have to move sprinklers, sometimes you have to change sprinkler heads. Another thing is sometimes you simply just have to adjust the sprinklers. We adjusted a few sprinkler heads that had been turning the wrong way and been spraying the house and spraying underneath the deck. Sometimes you just have to adjust the sprinklers every spring and make sure that your sprinklers are pointing in the right direction. That's why we had this dry spot we're going to fix right now, but there was a big dry spot out here that's kind of getting better now. Once we adjusted the sprinkler right here was spraying underneath the deck where it shouldn't be spraying, and it was spinning all the way around. So once we got that adjusted, so it focused spraying in the right spot. That's correcting that dry spot. And Samson's happy about that.
Done? Are you done?
Yep. Don't get wet though.
I know.
Back up, you're gonna get wet right there.
I know.
You're gonna get wet, I keep saying.
I know.
Well then move.
I am. So there's this dry spot. It's right here. I can't tell if you can see it. But there's this bad dry spot here, and before it wasn't hitting it because of the sprinkler and because it wasn't hitting out far enough. So now this one gets it out far enough and in, so it makes the grass greener everywhere.